Well, it's week 11, and we welcome you back to Mercedes-Benz Stadium for the Falcons' first home game in 2 weeks. The last 2 weeks, they took a trip up to the Northeast, then they went across the pond, still looking for a win in the win column today, and the first win in the division today as the Falcons take on the Carolina Panthers. Thank you guys for joining us for the Falcons pregame show presented by Ticketmaster. Taylor Vismor, Derek Rackley. I love playing at home so much. It's so fun to see the home team on the home field, but one of the main reasons I love being at home is because this guy, everyone comes over here right before the show starts and they're like, oh my gosh, is that Derek Rackley? Oh my gosh, is that Derek Rackley? It's my favorite part about home games.
I think it's been two people,
it's
by the way.
Every week.
Two.
Every week.
By the way, one of them that walked by told me that he doesn't like it when the roof is open. I disagree.
What's
I love
wrong
it.
with people
I love
these
it when the
days?
roof is open. So the glare, actually, yeah, there we go. I was going to try to point over my shoulder. It's much better off if our technological staff downstairs just shows you that the roof is open, and it's a beautiful day in the Atlanta area. And hopefully it's going to be a beautiful day on the field for the Atlanta Falcons as well. Yeah,
like I mentioned earlier at the very top of the show, Falcons have lost the last 4 games. It's been a very interesting 4 weeks to watch this team play because, of course, you had the San Francisco-Miami game where the run game really couldn't figure it out. Same with New England a little bit, too. But then they go across the pond. They play in Germany, and they actually have a really great game. It goes to overtime. First game of the day. It started at 9:30. Everyone's tuning in for their 1 o'clock games, and oh my gosh, the Falcons are going into overtime with one of the, if not the best team in the NFL right now in the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, let's sit right there for just a second and talk about this game just really briefly.
Sure.
Because I don't think many people in the NFL world, I'm not saying that you and I didn't think that the Falcons would go toe-in-toe with the Colts, but I don't think many people in the NFL world, in the media, thought that they would go toe-in-toe with the Colts. What impressed you really about the offense and that game that you saw against the Colts last week?
I think it was the fact that they just continued to battle in this game because as you see, if you go down 4 from the left for the Atlanta Falcons, 0 for 8 on 3rd down, like generally when that happens, you're thinking, oh gosh, like are they getting blown out? They're not even able to stay on the field. And the fact that not only were they in the game, they brought the game into overtime with a chance to win it by going 0 for 8 on 3rd down and giving up 323 yards rushing.
Yeah.
Those are the things where it's like, ouch. Like if those, let's just say the rushing numbers cut in half, Taylor, well, how would the chances be different? If they convert 3 of 8, or it's not going to end up being 8 if they end up converting 3 times, but maybe if it's 3 for 11 on 3rd down, how is the game different? Now, yes, I'm speaking hypothetically. You can't go back and change the numbers because it already happened. But the fact that the game was still competitive and they got dominated in 2 major statistical categories, not just a couple of them, but stopping the run, converting on 3rd down, you could generally look at those 2 on whether or not you're going to win football games. So the fact that they were still in it and they didn't fare well there, I guess it's somewhat impressive. But it's hard to be impressed with anything when you've lost 4 straight games.
Yeah, I mean, 4 straight games. I think the Falcons were in the same position last year. The only thing that felt like, okay, well, we'll have a bye. The Falcons will go on a bye. There's been 4 straight losses. They'll go on a bye. But now we've already had our bye. We had a week 5 bye, and now you got to figure out how to right this ship for the rest and the remainder of these games with 8 games left, 4 of which are going to be divisional games. And obviously last week, everyone in the division played, and everyone except for the Saints lost. Obviously, Carolina played the Saints, and the New Orleans Saints won 17-7. New England, they hosted the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they won 28-23. So it's been interesting watching this NFC South battle kind of continue on. Obviously, the Falcons are 3rd in the NFC South right now, but the Panthers lost last week. The Bucs lost last week as well. How do you see the South starting to pan out now that we are getting into the latter half of the season?
You know, I would say in a general sense that I still feel like the NFC South is up for grabs for a couple of reasons. Because Carolina went down and they stubbed their toe against New Orleans, because Tampa lost, and because Tampa is so banged up right now, right?
Yeah.
They may at some point get some reinforcements back, and they've looked like the strongest team in the division, but it's hard to say if you're an Atlanta Falcons fan that, yes, this division is ours for the taking when you're coming off of 4 straight losses, right? You got to take it one at a time. Now, the prospects change dramatically. They come away with a victory today against the Carolina Panthers, gives them another win, gives a loss to the Carolina Panthers, and maybe it gives them a little bit more confidence now that we've got off the losing streak, we've got a divisional win, and now we still got plenty of time left to stack wins. But the time is running out. It's got to happen quickly. It's got to happen today.
Yeah, I don't want to say that it's crunch time yet, and I know that we always feel, it feels like towards the end of the season we're always talking about, like, well, who's got to lose and where can we find anything to help the Falcons get to the playoffs? But it does feel like, I mean, everyone wants to get on the playoffs in their own way, on their own right, on their own wins and losses. They don't want to have to rely on anyone else's wins and losses to get them there. And I think, truthfully, if the Falcons want to get to the playoffs on their own, it has to start today. You have to find a win against the Carolina Panthers. You've only got 4 division games left. You lost the first 2 in the first half of the season. Obviously, the Falcons are 3-6 right now. It's not the best record that the Falcons have ever had, but there still is a little bit of hope on getting to the playoffs and making it. Over the last 5 years, 5 teams have made the playoffs after starting 3-6. Raheem Morris was on one of those teams as well back in 2023 with the Rams. I mean, these are some huge teams. I remember that 2022 Jaguars team with Trevor Lawrence. What an insane wild card game they played in that year. I mean, all hope is not lost, I think, is what we're trying to say to the fans right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I believe Raheem Morris was asked the same question maybe last week or the week before, and maybe it was this week, but I felt like it was last week, about you were on that team and how did it change, right? Like, what ended up having to happen in order to turn things around? And he made the point, which I agree with, that every team, every season takes on its own identity, right? So it's hard to compare this 2025 Falcons team against the 2023 Rams team. However, we've seen in recent history, and he's been a part of a turnaround. Now, what happened? Taylor, do you remember a few weeks ago when I was talking about keys to the game, and I said they've got to start getting on a roll, right? They got to put together a winning streak. Let's go back to that 2023 Rams team. They started 3-6, came off of their bye. They won 3 straight games, right? So they got that confidence. They got on a roll. They ended up losing a game to the Ravens, but it was on the road, and it was in overtime. So they were competitive. They had a chance to win the game late. Coming off the heels of that, again, 3-game winning streak. They ended up winning 7 of their final 8 games. Excuse me, it was 3 straight lost, then 4 straight wins, right? They won 7 of their final 8 games and found their way into the postseason. So what does that mean for the Atlanta Falcons? That's the type of run that you have to get on to close out the season if you want to find yourself in the postseason. That's what's going to happen. They're going to have to get on a sick run here to close out the season.
Well, and what's a little daunting, I think, if you look at this Falcons schedule, as you can see the upcoming next 4 weeks after this Carolina Panthers game, is they're on the road a lot. They have 2 games away, and then they're at home for 1 game, and then they have 2 more games away, and then they finish out the season home and home with the Rams and then the New Orleans Saints to kind of close it out. But, I mean, look right here. You have today's game, which is division. Then you go to New Orleans. Then you finish out this next 4 weeks at Tampa. That will obviously be, I mentioned it before the show started, throwback versus throwbacks in terms of uniforms, but uniforms don't matter at this point. It's where can you stack wins? Can you get a win today against the Carolina Panthers and then go down to New Orleans and give them a loss and then go up to New York? It's going to be interesting to see where the Falcons can find wins these next couple of weeks.
Well, it's interesting too is we saw like the slate of games coming up, right? And you look at it and you say, well, that's manageable, right? But then you also think, we've lost a game to the Miami Dolphins, right?
Yeah.
And then if you go back even further, you think about the Atlanta Falcons against the Buffalo Bills. How many people were really thinking that they were going to end up winning that game?
Right.
And it happened. So sometimes you can't just always look at what's on paper and say, oh, yeah, they can absolutely go 4-0. Yeah, they can go 4-0. They could go 4-0 if it was against the Chiefs and the Cowboys, just throwing out teams. If they play with confidence and they execute, and all the things that have plagued them recently get fixed, right? And it's got to start somewhere, because once you get a little bit of confidence, once you see it happen, once it's like I always make the analogy of a three-point shooter that's been in a slump in basketball, right? All they need to do is see the ball go through the basket one time.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, we're good. Well, this Atlanta Falcons team needs to get a couple of third down conversions.
Right.
They need a couple of touchdowns to say, we're good. They need some takeaways that maybe turn into a points and say, we're good. Those are the things that have to happen for them to get the confidence to say, now we can make a run.
Yeah, Jesse Bates said last week after the Colts game, we're not going to just roll over and just take it. Yeah, we're losing right now, but it's not like we're just giving up and we don't want to win. Of course we want to win, and I think you're right. And they have to string together positives before they can get to the win. You can't focus on the win. You got to focus one play at a time, trying to go 1-0, not just each week, but each play. And that all starts today as they host the Carolina Panthers. Let's go ahead and talk about these Panthers really fast, because I think this has been a season that not a lot of people thought the Panthers would have. They're not, I mean, I think a lot of people thought that they would be third or even fourth in the division this year. And they're sitting pretty at second in the division right now. When you look at this Panthers team, what have you seen from them? I mean, especially since week 3.
Yeah, so this is a team where it's like if you look at their schedule, you're going to say, wow, I can't really figure out what's going on with them.
Right.
But if you just look recently, right, they've won 4 games, and I'm not saying straight, but of the 4 games that they've won, the common occurrence is that they've been able to run the football extremely well. They've been able to stop the run on defense. And Bryce Young is, in my opinion, he's been like a complimentary quarterback.
Yeah.
He has not been a game changer. He has not been a guy that's absolutely lighting it up. I think he's just under 62% completion rate on the season, but because they've been taking care of a couple of really important departments, running the football and stopping the run, it's kept them in games. When you run the football well, you stay on the field.
Yeah.
That means time of possession starts working in your favor. That means time of the possession for the other team is dwindling down, right? Those all work in your favor. So that's what they've really been leaning on, is how well they've been able to run the football as of late.
You bring up running the football. Let's kind of talk about their main producers, 2 of which are the running backs in Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle. I really want to talk about these 2 in specific. Obviously, we will get to Tedero McMillan in just a second, but I want to focus on these 2 running backs because the story of these 2 running backs this season has been so interesting. I think coming into the season, Chuba Hubbard was the bona fide running back number 1. He had 217 rushing yards in the first 4 weeks. He then was inactive in week 5 and 6. That's when Rico Dowdle came in weeks 5 and 6, and he had 389 rushing yards and 1 touchdown in just 2 weeks. And then after Chuba Hubbard came back and was off that inactives list, he did not become the running back number 1. It was really Rico Dowdle's show. He has had, in the last 4 weeks, he has had 316 rushing yards, and Chuba Hubbard has only had 96 rushing yards. I mean, that kind of tells a story in itself of what happens when people get hurt, and it's the next man up mentality.
Yep.
But why is Rico Dowdle so hard for these defenses to stop right now?
Well, it's kind of interesting because you look at Chuba Hubbard's numbers, and his best game came against the Falcons. But then, and we're going to hear from Jeff Ulbrich here in a second, but since then, it's kind of shifted because Chuba Hubbard got hurt, and then because Dowdle came in and just performed so well. I mean, had some huge games in that stretch. 206 yards rushing, 183 yards rushing, 130 yards rushing in these 4 games that they have won recently. And not only that, but he hasn't coughed the football up. So what do you do as a play caller, as a head coach? You got to go with who's hot and who is giving your team the best chance to win. And that's been what's been happening recently with Rico Dowdle. He's been giving them that element to where they can continue to run the football. They don't turn this into being a Bryce Young through the air show.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they've realized is the best way for Carolina Panthers to be competitive and win football games is Bryce Young can't be throwing the football 35, 40, 45 times a game.
Right.
Bad things are going to happen. And you could probably make the argument that would happen with most quarterbacks in the National Football League, aside from maybe 5 to 7, right? But what they've done with Bryce Young is they've kept his attempts to 25 or less because these guys have been running the football so extremely well. That's going to continue to be the way that they're going to attack Atlanta, and you've got to rise up to the challenge and stop the run this week. We'll talk a lot about that throughout the rest of the show.
Yeah, let's kind of hit on the rush defense really fast for Atlanta. They're 29th in rush defense right now. They're first in the pass defense, but the rush is really where they're getting hurt. And when you have these 2 guys in Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard that are both very good, they can go anywhere else in the league and be number 1 running back for any team really in this league. How important is it to stop the run as early as possible in this game?
Yeah, I mean, just think about this 4-game losing streak, if you will, and who Atlanta has had to face. You got Christian McCaffrey, you got Devon Achane, Travion Henderson, and then, of course, last week, Jonathan Taylor, who's maybe having an MVP caliber season, and that's the reason why. These last 4 weeks, because if you go earlier in the season, the rush defense was pretty good.
Yeah.
But this last 4 weeks has really flipped it. And then when you give up the amount of yards you give up last week against the Colts, that's when the concerns start to come in. So you're going to have a short-term memory on the defensive side of the ball as far as what happened last week, what happened the last 4 weeks, because their job is going to be challenging enough to slow down this run game from Carolina that's playing with a lot of confidence right now. Offensive lines playing with a lot of confidence, and they want the coach to continue to call running plays if they're seeing Dowdle and Hubbard continuing to get through.
Yeah, I remember, kind of prepping for this week, you have to look back at week 3, right? And I remember sitting down with Chris Lindstrom after the game against Carolina, and he said, look, this is one of the most embarrassing losses that you can have, is you can't even put a point on the board, but you also give up 30 points on defense. And I think there were so many things that this team learned on all 3 phases of the ball. Media asked our Jeff Ulbrich and Jesse Bates III this week in media availability about what they learned last time they took on the Carolina Panthers.
I really feel like that second half of our game, when they really leaned on their run game and they got that established, and we could have done a much better job in that game, but I felt like that was where they kind of found who they were, and it feels like since that second half of our game, they've really started to lean on a run game that's been tops in the NFL from that point on.
I think they're running the ball very well right now. I don't know if Bryce Young has had like over 25 passes in the last, couple weeks or whatever. So obviously you see what their game plan is to try to control the clock by running the ball very well. Obviously Rico Dotwell's, the running back number 1 now. He's done a really good job of, getting that run game going. He's running pretty hard. So that's probably the most, the difference that I've seen so far is just the amount of runs and boots as well that we got to take care of.
It's really interesting in that, obviously we'll get to Tetairoa McMillan in just a second. I want to mention this, though. Ulbrich said, in the second half of that Carolina game, they really opened up the run game. And statistically, they really didn't. They had 52 yards in the first half with 12 attempts. And then in the second half, they had 18 attempts and 58 yards. I think what Ulbrich was saying is that they knew the run game for Carolina knew what this defense was going to do and how to take advantage of it. And it's going to be interesting to see how the defense plugs and plays to what the Carolina offense does today.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the way they'll continue to attack them with the run game, and they're going to try to use that to set up some plays downfield to Tetairoa McMillan that we just saw, right? First-round pick and a guy that they feel extremely confident with. Bryce Young has gotten a lot of chemistry with him throughout the course of the offseason leading into the season. Now, here's what I would say, is I don't think McMillan has been a dominant force in the passing game. We see his numbers. He had a couple of touchdowns in the game against Dallas. His best statistical game was 7 catches, 99 yards against Buffalo. But outside of that, he has gotten his reps, but he hasn't taken over games. And again, this is not what Carolina wants to do. They don't want to beat you through the air and put it all on the quarterback and the wide receiver's shoulders, but he has shown that he's got the ability to be the wide receiver 1 for them. And again, when we get to inactives a little bit later, there's going to be some changes for Atlanta, so maybe they do try to find a way to force feed McMillan a little bit more with some more opportunities through the air. But this is still going to be, they want to set their offense up by running the football.
Well, I think that this Falcons defense wants Bryce Young to kind of force feed Tetairoa McMillan a little bit today, stopping the run, making sure that Rico and Chuba cannot get anywhere, cannot get above 2 or 3 yards per carry. It's going to be interesting to see how this pass or this rush defense works against the Carolina rush offense. But let's kind of talk really fast. I know that you said it earlier in that Bryce Young, and you mentioned it again talking about Tetairoa, they don't want Bryce Young to really take huge shots. They kind of want him to be more of a game manager. So how do you, obviously Bryce Young, he can move out of the pocket really well, and the Falcons have seen a lot of quarterbacks that have moved out of the pocket this season so far. But how do you make sure that if they are going to call for Bryce Young to make a shot downfield, that he's uncomfortable, he's on the heels of his feet, he can make mistakes early in this game? Yeah,
I mean, this gets back to finding a way to create chaos up front, whether that's with your front 4, whether that's bringing pressure, whether that's zone pressures, right? Bringing linebackers in and dropping defensive ends out. Remember, Atlanta's got 2 extremely athletic rookie defensive ends that whether or not they feel comfortable with them dropping out, they've got the athleticism to do that, right? But that's a way to use scheme to try to mess up Bryce Young a little bit and find ways to get after the quarterback. But it's creating that pressure up front. I mean, you got to collapse the offensive line immediately. He's got to feel people getting in his lap. And then when he does, you're going to have some opportunities. Bryce Young, 11 touchdowns this year, 7 interceptions. So there should be some opportunities, but all of that happens when you make him uncomfortable, you make him throw off schedule, and yes, sometimes he is going to get outside the pocket. That's when they do get some shots down the field. But once you do, you've got to plaster over the receivers and make sure that he doesn't have any options downfield, that he's either got to run it or he's got to throw the ball out of bounds.
Yeah, well, thankfully, our DJ Shockley went back into the film room to talk about how this Falcons defense has created some chaos for the quarterbacks the last couple of weeks. Take a look.
Hey guys, we talked about sacks for the last couple weeks, and the Falcons have been getting home, and you love it. 13 sacks in the last 2 ball games. Hope that continues today. Let's talk about one from last week where I thought they did a really good job of disguising it and then doing a good job of getting home, which was James Pierce with his first sack of the season. Now, the thing to pay attention to is, here's Jesse Bates off the edge. It looks like he's blitzing, but the Falcons have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys who look like they're coming. On the snap of the ball, though, he's going to bail. He's going to peel on the back. Now, Daniel Jones knows he only has 5 offensive linemen to block these 6 rushers, but he doesn't know who's coming, who's not. He just knows he's hot. But where he thinks his hot is right here to Jonathan Taylor on this little swing route on the outside. But guess what? That's not going to happen because Jesse Bates looks like he's blitzing, showing it, disguising it really good, and now he's going to bail, and now his outlet he thinks he has is not there, and it gives time for my man James Pierce to get home. So watch as we get here. Now watch the next step. Now he's peeling. Now you can see him peeling. He thought he was blitzing. Now here comes Pierce off the edge here, and that's the pressure where he thought he's going. Here's Kay Nellis already about to bail, but he's got eyes on the quarterback in case he runs. But now the next step is, oh, I think I'm going to throw it to Jonathan Taylor. He's not open. Here comes Pierce with the speed to get home, and now you got a sack, fumble, balls out. Jalen Walker, his fellow rookie, coming to get the football, and it's all good after that. Showing one thing pre-snap, giving him something else post-snap, and then the speed of this defense to get home is what makes them so special. Puts a lot of pressure on opposing teams' quarterbacks, and we hope that happens today, and we get even more sacks.
All right, Shock, so I think that's a great example of how Jeff Ulbrich, defensive coordinator, using scheme to create advantages. And we had just talked about this, right? Like, how do you find ways to disrupt the quarterback and mess up his judgment a little bit? You show him that you're going to bring all-out pressure. You're challenging the offensive line and the quarterback to make sure that they communicate. All right, who do we have and who are we hot off of? Well, Atlanta had the right answer for it because they were thinking that Jonathan Taylor coming out of the backfield was going to be the outlet, but Jesse Bates showed pressure, peeled back out, and he was covered up. So Daniel Jones has to hold on to the football. That's when you can get to him, right? So you want hesitation as a defense. You want the quarterback to hesitate, to have to get to the second, get to the third in progression, and that's when you win defensively, right? So not only was it scheme, but Taylor, everybody executed, right? There was no breakdowns. That play does not work if Jesse Bates shows pressure and then he ends up coming after the quarterback and doesn't cover the back, right? That's when you get a missed assignment on defense and it turns into a big play. Scheme, but everybody working together on the same page is why they had success on that specific play.
I want to mention this really fast. Last year, the Falcons had 31 sacks total all season.
Total.
Coming into this week, the Falcons have 29 sacks. I mean, that shows you right there that Jeff Ulbrich, Raheem Morris this offseason were serious about fixing this pass rush. In the last 2 weeks, they've had 13 sacks. They had 6 against the Patriots, 7 against the Colts. I mean, those are 2 guys that do get sacked a handful of amount of times each game. It's kind of the norm for them, but still you're taking advantage of, you're swallowing this offensive line and you're getting to the quarterback, you're getting him on his heels, and you're either having him make bad decisions or hold him to the football for too long to get a sack in the book. Something that I loved about what you mentioned is how Jesse Bates also helps the pass rush in terms of, I'm going to cover this guy up so that you guys have more time to get to the quarterback. And I actually asked Jesse this week, like, how does it all work together? Can you kind of explain that in layman's terms for fans that might be like coming into football, understand a little bit better? And he said, well, it's kind of like this nucleus. It's kind of like this like organism. If we make sure that our wide receivers and our tight ends are taken care of, then the quarterback doesn't know where to go, and it helps the pass rush. And if the pass rush is getting greedy with what they're doing, then we get to get greedy when the quarterback decides to throw downfield. Jesse Bates has had 2 interceptions back-to-back games, one against New England Patriots, one against the Indianapolis Colts. And I asked him last week too, with opening up, it feels like you mentioned earlier in the show, when guys start to piece together these wins each and every series, each and every play, it helps get to the bigger, goal of winning the game. And I asked Jesse, is there a momentum shift that you've had the last couple of games in finding these interceptions? And he goes, I think so. I think you kind of figure out where everyone is, and you kind of start to see the ball a little bit differently. And once it hits for you, once you kind of get the bear off your back of interceptions and getting your interceptions for the first time this season, it kind of all starts to open up for you, and you kind of get to see the ball a little bit easier. Things get to fly around a little bit more, which was fun to hear.
He's definitely a student of the game. We've talked so much about Jesse Bates and how well he prepares, and then his experience, right? He has seen so many plays develop throughout his career that he knows when he can take those chances. And I think the coaching staff is affording him the opportunity that we trust you. We know that you have seen enough and that we will live with maybe a potential explosive play given up, but we think good things happen when you trust your instinct and go make plays. And so we've seen that the last couple of weeks. It'd be great if that ends up happening again today. And I think it's also, it seems like Jeff Ulbrich is moving him down in the box a little bit more. Maybe that's because he's feeling comfortable with what Xavier Watts is bringing back in the back end, but he's such a playmaker, Jesse Bates is, that you got to find a way to get him around the football. Yeah,
what's been so funny is I don't know that I will ever forget when Jesse Bates went to the podium and was like, please throw the ball to me. Like, stop throwing it to Xavier. We know what Xavier can do. He can make interceptions, and he's making you guys pay for it.
Look at him. You see him hitting his chest? He was just saying, throw the ball to me.
Yes, exactly. And it's been fun to watch them work, and obviously this Falcons defense has not had a defensive point from a turnover, from the interceptions or forced fumble recoveries that the defensive line has had the last couple of weeks. So we'll see if that can change today. But let's go ahead and move to this Falcons offense and this Panthers defense, because obviously last time the Falcons saw the Panthers, they didn't find the red zone. They didn't find the end zone one time, 30-0. What has to change today from the last 4 weeks, and even from week 3 as well, for this Falcons offense?
Yeah, let's start with the week 3 game, right? It's kind of one of those games where you want to forget, maybe for the rest of your life, but you can't. You know why? Because you play the team twice in your division, right? And so it's kind of like the worst deja vu that you can ask for is when you get shut out in the National Football League. We don't put this up to kind of dwell on what happened back in week 3. This, to me, is more of as an athlete, as a competitor, as an NFL player, this has to be one of those, like, that was an embarrassing moment for me individually, our team, and our organization. And our goal today is to show that that is not going to happen again, right? And that has to be a constant reminder of what happened. Remember, it was 10-0 at halftime, and then things kind of spiraled out of control after that. We saw a pick 6, and then Atlanta ended up getting one-dimensional, having to throw the football. Nothing worked. And so that's how they ended up losing that game like that. Then you look at the last 4 weeks. What has been the struggle of the last 4 weeks? Inability to convert on third down, right? Third down has been a problem, right? Not able to consistently run the football. And then obviously giving up a lot of rushing yards, most specifically last week against the Colts. Like, those are all things that kind of work either individually, like one game it ends up rearing its ugly head, and then the next game it's not. Or it's a theme that continues throughout. So to me, the biggest thing is offensively converting on third down and staying on the field. Like, this offense needs to put together some drives. Too many 3-and-outs or 4-and-outs, or maybe one first down, and then you're punting the football back. If you can't stay on the field offensively, how is your team going to get confidence and build momentum? Yeah, it's been really interesting to watch this Falcons offense throughout the entirety of the season, because it's kind of like a tale of two rushing offenses in a way. I feel like in the beginning of the season, they were doing really well on the rush offense, and they were able to run the ball really well with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. The last 4 weeks, I mean, they've had 3 games in a row where they didn't reach 100 yards rushing at all. Last week was the only week in the last 4 weeks that they had over 100 yards rushing. It seems like these defenses in the NFL have figured out how to stop Bijan, how to stop Tyler Algier, and how to stop the run to force a long 3-and-out, a long third down, a long second down. So how do you make sure that Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier can get the touches they need, not just the touches, but the chunk runs that this offense so desperately needs right now? Well, listen, this was bound to happen, right? That opposing defenses were going to turn on the tape, and they were going to continue to see Bijan Robinson ripping off 8, 12, 17-yard runs, making people miss. And then they start to figure out, okay, why has he got the ability to make people miss? Because he's getting through the hole, and he's getting a one-on-one with somebody in open space. So then the defense says immediately, our number one goal is we cannot let him get out in open field.
Yeah.
That's when he's going to make anybody, the best of them in the National Football League, look silly. So then they started seeing some more run pressures, right? Some run blitzes on predictable running downs that started to work. And then more film gets out as far as teams slowing down Bijan, teams disrupting this offensive line. And then that becomes part of their game plan.
Yeah.
So for Atlanta, what do you got to do? You have to think about, you have to self-scout. How have we been slowed down? What have teams been doing to us to slow down Bijan Robinson?
Yeah.
Guess what? That's what you're going to see. That's what you're going to see, and you got to be ready for it, and then you have to execute. It's the word that gets talked about all over, is execute. But at the end of the day, it's the truth.
Yeah.
Like, these guys on the other side get paid too. A lot of money, and they're really good. But that doesn't give you an excuse to say that team's really good.
Yeah.
You got to block them up and find a way to get free. And they've got to get number 7 free. He is a difference maker in the National Football League.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about third down a lot so far about this Falcons offense, and it's not like an issue that just you and I are seeing. It's an issue that this coaching staff and Michael Penix is also seeing in terms of getting to those third and long situations. And how do these Falcons and this Falcons offense stop getting down in distance in the third and longs? Media spoke to them earlier this week about what this Falcons offense could do moving forward.
So our biggest problem right now is third down, right? You can just put a nail on that, right? Because, like, we don't have any problem moving the football. We got no problem throwing the football. We got, we have moments where we run the football like the best team in the football league. We have moments we struggle to run the football, but you can always identify some things and fix those things, right? Right now we have the last couple of weeks we have some issues with third down, so we got to figure out how to be our best when our best is required at those best moments, right? The money down situations. If we fix the money down situations, that'll fix a lot of our permeating problems that we've had the last couple of weeks.
Just executing the simple things, things that we go over each and every day, just so that whenever we do get in those situations, we're at our best, and we weren't at our best in those moments, and that's what we got to fix and get right moving forward.
We also can do a better job avoiding third and longs. We've been, the first 5 weeks, I think we were the lowest in the league in terms of the amount of third and longs, and we were, pretty efficient on third downs. Now the last 5 weeks, we've been in way too many third and long situations, which are going to be difficult, but that can help with early down efficiency. And so all those things kind of factor into it from first, second down to third down. But when we get those chances, no matter what the D&D is on third down, we got to find a way. We're putting obviously a big emphasis on it with the pass protection and routes and just connecting on things. And then, like I said, as coaches, just making sure we got the right answers for the guys.
All right, so Zach Robinson said in the first 5 weeks, the Falcons had the lowest number of third and longs. Well, I look at the stats, the last 5 weeks of this season, not the first 5 weeks, but the last 5 weeks that the Falcons have had, they are the last in third down conversions, 25% conversion rate on third down. I mean, so many, like, that kind of keeps you from the red zone. We've talked about the red zone inefficiencies that this Falcons team has had. I told you before the show started that, actually they're 16th in the league, and it's not just because they're not capitalizing on the red zone. They're not getting to the red zone because of these third and long. So obviously this Carolina defense is going to want to get this Falcons offense in third and long situations. So who are some guys that the Falcons offense needs to be aware of as to take on the Panthers today?
Yeah, I mean, this is an offense that they've got to find a way to stay on the field. And yes, they need to think about the players that are going to attack them, but they've got to think about how are they going to find success themselves, right? And you talked about third down. I looked at third down. Tori McElhaney from our team actually did a long report on this. It's on AtlantaFalcons.com. She talked about how it's fared the entire season. I wanted to see how it worked the last 4 weeks, right? 4-game losing streak. Is this an area of concern? And the numbers that I found is we heard Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson talk about third and long situation. Well, it kind of depends on how you define third and long. But to me, I defined it as 7+, right? To me, third and long is 3rd and 7 or more. And over the last 4 weeks, Atlanta is 1 out of 20.
Wow.
On 7+. Wow. Okay? That's 5%. That's not very good. Now, that's also what Zach Robinson is talking about. Too many opportunities that they're sitting in third and long. Well, how about 3rd and 6 or less? Much more manageable third down. 8 out of 21, that's 38%. In my opinion, it's still not good enough, right? Third down number in the National Football League is 40% or more, and you're playing what we call winning football, okay? There's 13 teams right now in the National Football League that are 40% or more, right? Atlanta Falcons sitting at 33.7. It's 29th in the National Football League. That's the reason why this offense looks for lack of a better word, clunky at times, right? Because they're not able to stay on the football field. So they've got to find ways. Yes, everybody wants to stay in more third manageable. But guess what? That's not always reality in the National Football League. You're going to have 3rd and 9. You're going to have 3rd and 11. That doesn't mean you just give up on the drive. You got to find a way to convert on 3rd and 11. Stay out of it as much as possible. But when you get the manageable, 3rd and 6 or less to me is manageable. 38% is not winning football, right? So when you kind of break down the numbers, that's where they've got to get better, is on those situations. Stay on the field, and then they'll see their time of possession start to grow.
Yeah, well, obviously this Panthers defense would like to get them in 3rd and long situations and even put pressure on the quarterback. Obviously, Derek Brown is not on this list right here, but he is a star in this league.
Problem.
He's a problem. I told you earlier, he is a bust. He's huge. He's massive. He's hard to stop. And all these other guys are defensive standouts for this Carolina Panthers team, too, because here's the thing. Derek Brown, he gets in Michael Penix's face. He makes Penix make a throw downfield that he doesn't really truly believe in, and then Horn or Jackson can take full advantage of those missed opportunities from Michael Penix just by starting with Derek Brown, who's on the defensive line. How can the Falcons make sure not to give the Panthers too much to work with today?
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk a little bit about inactives here in a bit, but obviously it's not going to have Bergeron again, so that's an issue because Derek Brown is an interior defensive tackle, right? So he's going to be matched up more often than not against your guards and center. And he's a guy that's got to be accounted for. He's not only accounted for, but maybe double-teamed throughout the course of the game. Now, what's that going to do? It's generally going to end up singling up other players, but you just don't want him to take over the game as far as getting upfield, pushing the pocket, or peeling back and getting Bijan Robinson down at the ground behind the line of scrimmage. You've got to secure him, but to your point, that if he ends up in the lap of Michael Penix, now he's maybe throwing the ball off balance, and some of those defensive backs that we just talked about have an opportunity for some interceptions. So that all starts up front. Yeah. All of this starts, run game, 3rd downs, pass protection, it all starts on the offensive line.
Almost like the games are won in the trenches. It almost feels like the games are won in the trenches. You've mentioned it 3 or 4 times throughout this show so far. I think I've mentioned it 2 or 3 times as well. Let's go ahead and get to the inactives, because for the Falcons, it's actually a rather longer list of guys that are on the inactives. Obviously, D. Alford, Mike Hughes, just 1 and 2 right there. That kind of brings up the question of, well, who's going to be the starting corner today? And then you have Leonard Floyd and you have Zach Harrison, which does deal with all of the switching in and out that this defensive line and this edge rusher group likes to have in terms of keeping their defenders' legs kept up and not run down so much. And then obviously Matthew Bergeron is a large miss for this offensive line. Let's talk about this Falcons inactives really fast, because we did spend some time before the show started, right up to the wire of the show starting, of who was going to start in corner for D. Alford or Mike Hughes, because Mike Hughes started the season as cornerback number 1 across from A.J. Terrell, and then D. Alford came in for him last week when he was inactive last week. So looking at where the depth chart is now and who is on this team, obviously Kobe Bryant was elevated to the 53-man roster today off of the practice squad, but who do you think will be starting today for this Falcons defense?
Yeah, so when I saw this list and I saw both of these guys out, I said, wow, that's basically your number 1 corner, your number 1 backup corner, and guys that have started throughout the course of this year. So who is going to start opposite of A.J. Terrell? And it sounds like it's going to be Natron Brooks, and I think he's making his first career NFL start. What do they always say about the National Football League? It's all about next man up, right? So Natron Brooks is going to have a challenge, right? We talked about Tetairoa McMillan. Know that Bryce Young is they're paying attention to the injury report. They know who's not going to be on the field and who's not going to be starting. So he's got to understand and he's got to anticipate he's going to get some action. Yeah. Like they're going to find a way to throw the ball in his vicinity, or they're going to try to take advantage of ways to try to confuse him, try to mess up his eyes and his thought process, right? That's good offensive coordinating right there, is try to find a way that you can exploit a matchup. So that's definitely something that I'm going to keep my eyes on. It's not just all on him, because they can find a way to scheme around it. You can give him help over top. You can make sure that you're playing more zone than you are man, and then everybody else kind of helps rally around him. I don't want to sit there and say that he's going to be the Achilles heel. He's a National Football League player.
Yeah.
But he's going to get targeted. Just know that it's going to happen and be ready for it.
Yeah, and he was a rotational player a little bit last year as well, and he's been on the practice squad. He's been here for camp. Like, he knows this playbook. He knows what this defense is supposed to do and how they're supposed to play against these offenses in the National Football League. I think something that we were talking about pre-show was, will Billy now be the starting corner? And it looks like he's going to stay in the nickelback position. And what's so interesting, that what that says to me is how much faith they have in Billy in being the nickel and playing that nickel spot, and how good he is at playing nickel. I mean, we talked about it before about how, yes, nickel and corner, I mean, people say that the nickel is really the third corner on the field, but it's an entirely different position and it's an entirely different skill set. Obviously, Billy's been dealing with some injury as of late, but having him back, and then, no, we're not going to move him to corner. He's going to stay in nickel. It's been really interesting to see how they use that rookie so far this year.
Think about a nickel is generally playing on the inside, but that nickel is also responsible for the entire field.
Yeah.
Whereas a corner, sometimes you got the sideline to help you out, right? You got a little bit of a backdrop, right?
Yeah.
They can only go so far out to the sideline before they run out of bounds. Well, when you're in the middle of the field, they've got, the NFL field is 53 1/3 yards wide, right?
Yeah.
But when you're playing a nickel spot, you might have to defend 46, 47 yards going side to side.
Yeah.
So that's why they want to keep him in that position, because that's where there's a chance for a lot more explosive plays if he is in his right spot, or if you have somebody that's not prepared to be in the nickel spot.
All right, let's go ahead and get to the keys to the game presented by Wells Fargo. You've got three for me. What is your first
They
key
could
to the
be
game?
to you as well.
I mean, they could.
But the
They
first,
probably doesn't really apply to me, honestly.
first one is stop the run, right? We saw that last week against Indianapolis, and it's one of those areas that's got to be fixed immediately. And then we talked a lot early on in the show about what Carolina wants to do. They want to run the ball right now with Rico Dowdle and have Chuba Hubbard be the complementary piece. So this has got to be a game where they respond, they stop the run, and they force Bryce Young to throw the football. If this is another game where Carolina rushes for 200 yards, it's going to be a problem for Atlanta.
Yeah, the Panthers right now are averaging 133 yards per game. They are 8th in the NFL in their rush offense. As I mentioned before, the Falcons are 29th in rush defense, allowing 146 yards per game. So it's going to be interesting to see who pushes and who pulls a little bit more today. What's your second key to the game?
A special teams win, right? Now, what does that mean? That just means, obviously, your special teams group playing well, but we've seen field goals and extra points that have been missed this year. You got to make your kicks, right? We've seen some bad field position as far as coverage goes from Atlanta. We've even seen a couple of bad punts in this throughout the course of the season. So a special teams win means you're doing what you're supposed to do in the kicking game. You're covering everybody up. And how about make a play in the kicking game, right? Maybe this is the game they get a big return. They get a touchdown. They get a score. They get a blocked field goal, something along those lines. But this needs to be a game where we're not talking about the special teams let us down. We're talking about the special teams helped us win this game.
Yeah, all right, third and final key to the game today.
I talked a lot about it.
Yep.
Third down has got to be better. It's just got to be better. We talked about last week was no good. For the Atlanta Falcons that we've talked about over this 4-game losing streak. It's not been good. We talked about them being 29th in the league in third down conversions. It's got to be better. And you hear Raheem Morris talk about it. You hear Michael Penix talk about it. We just got to fix it. We've got to execute. It's scheme and it's execution.
Yeah.
Guys got to get open. You got to block the line of scrimmage, and then you got to make plays downfield.
If you want to get better in the red zone, you got to get to the red zone. And the way you get to the red zone is by converting on third down.
There you go.
There you go. All right, time for my preference. I have two, but they're really one in the same today. It's going to be points or non-offensive points. And really from takeaways, obviously, starting with the defense. This Falcons team, I mentioned it earlier in the show, while they do have takeaways on the defensive side of the ball, they have not scored any points on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, with the James Pierce Jr. fumble recovery that he had in New England and the Jalen Walker fumble recovery that he had the next week in Germany, none of them had points. And then Jesse Bates with his 2 interceptions, Xavier Watts. I mean, I can go on and on. The Falcons have had turnovers, but it's a matter of finding the turnovers and then finding the end zone with those turnovers. And then, hey, what about on special teams?
There you go.
Run it back.
Run it back. Blocked field goal. Blocked extra point.
Yes.
Blocked extra point. Take it back for 2 points.
Come
Whatever it ends
on.
up being.
Safety.
Find a way
Hello.
to get those non-offensive scores. I like it.
I like it. All right, so that is the show for today. Thank you guys for joining us so much for the Falcons pregame show presented by Ticketmaster. We will not be back here for 2 more weeks as the Falcons are on the road taking on the Saints on next Sunday, and then the Jets the Sunday after that. Now listen, here's something that you guys need to know. We will have 2 pregame shows next week. One will be on Thursday. It will be on YouTube. It will premiere on YouTube where we find it here today, and then we will have one Sunday afternoon before the 4:30 kickoff. It will be at 3:30 on Sunday, just like how you guys are watching right now. So we'll have 2 pregame shows for you guys. Make sure to tune into both of those, and until then, we will see you guys then. Hopefully Falcons can get on the winning column today. Enjoy, guys.